everybody's skin barrier is different and everybody's skin is different. It's impossible to predict how people are going to respond, right? It depends on your skin barrier integrity. It depends on your inflammatory and sensitivity to different things.
Welcome to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast, where we empower women with the latest insights and advice on holistic health. From cutting-edge medical research to practical wellness tips, our mission is to help you thrive at every stage of life. Join us as we explore topics ranging from hormonal balance and reproductive health to nutrition and mental well-being. Whether you're seeking solutions for a specific health concern or simply want to enhance your overall wellness, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey to better health together. This is the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's podcast episode. I am here with Dr. Rebecca Anderson from our Toronto team, and we are going to talk about skin from a whole different direction. I know with Dr. Dash, we talked a little bit about skin and acne. Today, we are going to get into lipid barrier and nutrients. We're going to get into this subtype of acne that Dr. Rebecca is seeing a lot with respect to using stripping agents that are causing acne. So it's not oily skin, it's something else. So before we dive into all that fun stuff, give us a rundown of you, what got you into naturopathic medicine, what's exciting you these days, and then we'll go from there.
For sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Rebecca. I focus in skin and hair and women's health, and I work at the Toronto West location. So I got into naturopathic medicine a long time ago, and I originally did my undergrad planning to go into conventional medicine. Kind of got into my fourth year of undergrad and just felt like intuitively it just wasn't the right move. Ended up getting into cancer and autoimmune disorder research for a while, doing preclinical, clinical research, that kind of thing. And while I was working there, I was working at a private biotech company, and it was run by an MD who was actually very holistic and natural medicine based. And he kind of put that like seed in my brain in terms of like, right, there's a whole other realm of medicine and you can actually go to school and be regulated for that. So once that happened, I was off to Toronto, went to CCNM. And I think, my passion for skin is really just, I feel like skin is a very challenging faculty just because, it's a representation of all the different systems in one.
Yeah.
And I like that challenging sort of like figuring out a mirror to internal health, that kind of thing. And I also struggled with acne as well. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then, of course, anti-aging and skin and all that stuff is also my thing too. So
one of the things you have to remind me is to talk to me about your skincare routine. I feel like we should ask everyone at the clinic, like, what's your skincare routine? And you're going to tell exactly everything you need to know about that person by their skincare routine. Mine's like living libations, skin, whatever, oil. That's it. That's all I do. Nothing else. Then there's going to be people on the team that I'm sure have a 25-step protocol. I will not name names. They are listening. They know who they are.
Already. I got you.
So let's talk a little bit about skin dynamics. Okay, let's look at what are the components of the skin. I know we were doing a partnership with a green skincare company for a while, and it was so much fun. And we were sitting in my car driving to go to this talk. And I was like, okay, give me a rundown of what I need to know about these barriers, etc. Because I very much, as I do all things, approach it from the bottom up as opposed to the top out. So give us a rundown of what we need to know about skin and these different barriers and all that fun stuff.
For sure. And I mean, you're definitely right in terms of everything comes from an internal perspective. But when it does come to skin, I think the topical situation is very relevant. And even though it is sort of a Band-Aid solution to a certain degree, it can kind of make or break what's going on. So the way I like to describe skin, so you obviously have your new skin cells being formed at the very base. And as they get older, they kind of move up the line and sort of die off as you get to the top. So I think your skin cell turns over every 30 days when you're like in your 20s kind of thing. And it just like slows down as you age, of course. And then at the top of that sort of dead skin cell layer, you have a lipid barrier. So the lipid barrier is made out of fats. And it's a super duper important barrier because it protects from transepidermal water loss, which is water coming out of the skin. And it also creates a waxy barrier against pollutants and allergens and microbes and all those kinds of things getting into the skin. So a lot of the time in like barrier integrity really does come down a lot to your topical regimen. And so that's why the topical regimen isn't just sort of a band-aid solution. It's an integral part of maintaining that barrier. And of course, there are internal things you can do for the barrier, but the topical stuff really does play a huge role for sure.
Okay. So when you get into barrier integrity, topicals play a really big role in that. Why do some people have to worry so much about that barrier integrity and use a ton of topicals and some people do not? Right. So I look at my kiddos right now. Aiden is covered in eczema as soon as it gets cold. So, like, what's different? What determines that?
Good question. And I think it does come down to genetics to a certain degree, like those who are predisposed to atopy, so asthma, eczema, allergies, just tend to have a naturally disrupted skin barrier. So I think seeing those people on the far extreme of a disrupted skin barrier, you kind of have this spectrum of people and how good of an integrity their skin barrier has. And it does depend a lot on your topical regimens. If you're overstripping your skin, you're going to have a disrupted skin barrier. If you're not consuming enough healthy fats or getting nutrients, the ones that you need to actually create that barrier. Like I have a lot of people who come in and, you can clearly tell they have a disrupted skin barrier.
What do you mean by that? You clearly can tell they have a disrupted skin barrier.
Good
I
question.
play devil's advocate here, right? Like I play patient and listener. So how do you know?
So you can tell by the appearance of the skin. If it tends to look sort of dull and dry and like lacking voluminous, I don't know, like it's not lustrous, if you will. And it tends to be a little bit more irritated looking, a little bit more red, it has a little bit more texture. Those are indications of a disrupted skin barrier.
So we were saying clearly someone has a disrupted skin barrier. You see it when they come in, and then
Right.
I assume you're going into
And then I
talking about
ask
what you
them,
think.
how much healthy fat are you getting? How much protein are you getting? And they're literally getting none of those things in their diet. And I always say to them, okay, from a macronutrient perspective, when you eat protein and you eat healthy fats, they become part of your body, right? Your skin is made out of them, your lipid barrier is made out of them. So if you're not getting in enough through the diet, you're not going to have a good skin barrier, period. Because like your body's not just going to make them out of nowhere kind of thing. And then also I think inflammation. So inflammation is a process by which the body actually makes spaces between epithelial cells to allow white blood cells to move through them. So if you have sort of a natural tendency towards inflammation, which so many people do, then that also I think plays a huge role as well. And that's also very relevant in eczema, obviously.
And the natural tendency towards inflammation is also highly treatable. I think that's the piece, right? Like we talk to patients all the time and they're like, oh, I'm just an inflamed person. It's like, are you?
No, for sure.
Like, is that true? So then we mentioned this a couple times. What are these strippers that we all should avoid?
The strippers. Okay. So the skin barrier is a very delicate balance, right? That's why it's so hard to treat. And everybody's skin barrier is different. So you want to have a skincare regimen that is cleansing and exfoliating enough to make sure that the skin barrier is clean. The pores are not clogged. You don't have pollutants and microbes and things sitting on the skin. But at the same time, you don't want to be over cleansing, over exfoliating to strip that barrier. So it's a very delicate balance. The strippers that I most commonly, basically any kind of cleansing is going to be stripping the skin barrier for sure. Any type of exfoliation is going to be stripping the skin barrier. So we're talking physical exfoliation, those scrubs or chemical enzymes and acids. You also have a lot of active ingredients that strip the skin barrier. So retinols and vitamin C can even strip the skin barrier to a certain degree, depending on how strong it is. You have all of your typical acne treatments. So salicylic acid, benzoyl peroxide, sulfur, they all strip the skin barrier. That's actually how they work. So in acne, for example, you just tend to have people who have an overstripped skin barrier because all of the acne treatments are aimed at stripping that barrier.
What about oil cleansing?
Great question. I would say oil cleansing is the way to help your skin barrier in the cleansing process. So essentially what you're doing is you're protecting the skin barrier from the harsh cleansing of a water-based cleanser. Of course, the oil cleanser is good because it's getting those like oil-based residues and things off of your face. But really what it's doing is sort of creating another barrier and replenishing the skin barrier in preparation for that water-based cleanser that's going to strip away oils and that kind of stuff.
Not asking for myself, but what if I just use oil? Like I literally just use oil. I rub it on my face, it takes off my makeup, takes off oil-based stuff, walk away. That's literally all I use. I've tried so many different topicals, chemicals, cleansers. It never ends well.
Yeah.
So how is that just adding to the lipid barrier, or is that a situation where it's just because I'm not hardly using anything? My body's like, yeah, you're fine.
So when you say you use an oil-based step, what kind of oil do you use? Just like straight up oil or
I
like a
literally use the living libations, the antioxidant oil. That's it. Rub it on my face twice a day. That's it.
So there's two situations. Either the product that you have has been put together by Living Libations and it is marketed as an oil-based cleanser. Therefore, its main sort of carrier is an oil, but it still has surfactants and things like that in it. So in that case, you're putting it on the skin. The oil is the vehicle, but it still has a little bit of those like emulsifiers and that kind of thing. Or you're using oil and you naturally have a disrupted skin barrier and it doesn't irritate or clog your pores. So again, if that is in fact the case, that goes to show you that everybody's skin barrier is different. If I did that and I only cleansed my face with oil, my pores would be clogged 100,000%. So that goes to show you
Yeah,
that
and
every
that's like I have celiac disease, right? And like all those years of malabsorption of all of those things. So when you say surfactants, again, like this is why I bring people on the team, everyone that are smarter than me in their own specific area. So it's got jojoba oil, or however you want to say that, coconut oil, rose, sea buckthorn, lavender, ylang ylang, grapefruit, a weird plant that's called something martini, but I'm about it. No wonder I love this stuff. And then stone root. That's it. That's all the ingredients.
Okay, so I would say that's mostly an oil. Grapefruit is going to give you a little bit of acid, so that could be a little bit of the exfoliating quality of that. That would be my best guess. But I think it
Oh
comes
yeah.
down to the fact that your skin barrier needs a lot. And again, too, like you said, you don't put, I'm sorry.
You're just a lot, Sarah. You're just a lot. This is what we learned.
It's so good. And again, like you said, it all also depends how much stuff do you put on your face. You don't have a super fancy skincare regimen and put all of these, makeup and sunscreen and like all of these kinds of things on your face, and you don't have a whole lot to take off. So that's the perfect example, right? It all depends on that balance in the skin barrier. For you, your skin barrier is not worried about getting clogged. It needs more sort of barrier support. Yeah.
So then what's your skincare routine? We already covered mine. And for everyone who's dying sitting on the back end of this podcast being like, well, I need to know my skincare routine. Dr. Rebecca does this all the time. So you can book an appointment. She'll get into health stuff, but you can also spend tons of time going through skincare because I know there's so many people who desperately want someone to audit that skincare for them. And to be completely honest, we spend hundreds of dollars on skincare. So it will probably save you money to book an appointment. Anyways, what's your skincare routine?
100%. And I actually just made another sort of smaller appointment option too for people who just want to talk topical stuff. So it's like 30 minutes. We can't get in any deeper than anything topical, but that's also an option too. Because I find sometimes people literally just want to talk about topicals and they don't want to hear about their diet or the constipation or anything else. Even though those things are the most.
Though they should. I feel like that's why I don't do that because I don't care what people want to know.
100%. And again, you need to be working on the other stuff too. There's no way around that period. Okay, my skincare regimen. So I would define my skin as being super dry and sensitive. So I do not cleanse my skin in the morning at all. I just do a quick water rinse, go in with my 3-step barrier integrity trio, which is a humectant. So that's going to hold on to water. I use glycerin, not hyaluronic acid. That's another very common humectant. I find that hyaluronic acid makes me irritated. Then on top of the humectant, I put an emollient. So an emollient is basically a plant oil that's going to like smooth out the skin cells. And that's a really good way to give your barrier some love, basically. It sort of fills in those gaps. Depending on what kind of mood I'm in, I use different types of plant oils. So if my skin's kind of inflamed, I'll use arnica. If I have breakouts, I'll use black cumin seed oil. Like you name, it depends. I really, really like arnica oil right now though, just to put it out there. I find it evens out my tone very nicely that I haven't found with other oils. Anyways, then on top of the emollient, I put in a moisturizer. So that's going to be that final occlusive step that's going to hold in the humectant. It's going to hold in the oil, all of that kind of thing. And then, of course, I put sunscreen on. I wear tinted sunscreen. Tinted sunscreens have iron oxide. So those are going to prevent extra blue light penetration, which is one of the leading causes of aging. That is my AM routine. Then my PM routine, again, because I'm super dry, I always do an oil cleanse because, again, my skin barrier is not happy ever. So I do an oil cleanse, but I follow it with a water-based cleanse. And then I put the same trio, humectant, emollient, occlusive on top. At night, though, is when I'll start to use an active. So depending on, again, kind of what I'm feeling, I'll use a retinoid, I'll use a vitamin C, I'll use some sort of antioxidant blend. But that's typically when I put my actives in. And that's it.
That's it.
Oh, and I also...
How long does that take you?
Honestly, not long. Maybe 5 minutes. And just so you don't judge me too much, I
don't judge.
I use very basic products. So I use like actual plant oils from like Divine Essence, and now I use like actual vegetable glycerin as my humectant. So it's nothing fancy or expensive. I try to go very budget friendly.
You don't have to spend as much money on your skincare as you want, girl. Like, rock on with your bad self.
I just letting you know, okay?
Well, I have thousands of dollars in products I never use in my cupboard. So like I'm never going to be one to judge because they smell so good. Like this is my thing, right? I go, oh my God, what's that one brand that Eminence. I have the place where I get my facials. She uses Eminence products. They smell phenomenal. They're clean. I look at the ingredients. It makes a lot of sense to me. And then I spend too much money on them and I buy them and then I put them on and then my skin breaks out. And I'm like, and here we are again.
And I think Eminence is very good for that. They sort of go down this like natural route kind of thing, but they're super expensive. And again, you don't want anything to smell like anything that you put on your face. So that's my take on fragrance for sure.
So I'm not going to abide by that because I love the smell of a good skincare. Okay. So then getting outside of our stuff, because, we're just here to talk to each other. But when we're diving into the acne component of stripping, what's actually happening? Like, how does someone get acne when they're using these products specifically for acne, right? Or how does someone get acne when they use vitamin C, etc.? So, like, walk me through that.
For sure. So a lot of the time, and I've been seeing this a lot recently, when you have acne patients who come in usually in their mid to late 30s kind of thing, they've sort of been through the ringer in terms of all of these different pharmaceutical things they've tried. They are just going very heavy on the acids, on the retinoids, on the you name it. And their skin barrier tends to be disrupted as a result of that. When your skin barrier is disrupted, you create this very interesting dynamic. So whenever we look to acne, we always think, okay, first things first, what is clogging the pore, right? Is it some sort of comedogenic product that you're putting on the face? Is it excess sebum or excess oil or excess skin cells that are clogging the pore, right? When we go root cause, we're like, what's clogging the pore in the first place? Majority of the time, we get to sebum or to oil. And when it comes to oil, the question is, okay, do you actually have oily skin, or do you have oily skin as a compensation response for having dry skin? Your skin barrier is now disrupted. Your skin's freaking out because it's like losing water, allergens are coming in, and its compensation is to produce sebum in defense of that, right? So now when we treat the root cause, okay, well, we need to know, is it oil in fact coming from high androgens? Or is it actually oil as a compensation for having dry skin and a disrupted skin barrier? So like I mentioned, in those disrupted skin barrier patients, the appearance of the acne tends to be very different. So in your sort of traditional oily skin acne patient, you have lesions around, they're very spaced out, they're not symmetrical by any means, they're red, they're inflamed, they're deep. Whereas the people who tend to have more of that skin barrier integrity acne, it looks more like little bumps and they're kind of everywhere and they're red and they're irritated. And they tend to actually have come to a point in their skincare journey. That's probably why they end up coming to me, because they're like, I'm using the benzoyl peroxides, I'm getting chemical peels all the time, I'm using the retinoids. I use them, my skin breaks out into this textured little bumpy appearance. And that's a great indicator that in fact your skin barrier is disrupted, and it's not necessarily the acne, it's your skin barriers responding to the most previous treatment, basically. Does that make sense?
Totally, 100%. So what are some of what we would call from a medical perspective, but we'll break it down, some of the physiological factors? So meaning, what are some of the other health concerns or challenges people could have that would lead them into this camp of the disrupted skin barrier acne? Because we talk about high male sex hormones and high insulin being a driver of traditional androgenic acne. But when we're talking about this, what are the key, like, top 3 or 4 total body health concerns that you're looking at to say this is what's predisposing this person?
For sure. And I mean, they don't vary too much, honestly. We're still looking into insulin and high androgens to a certain degree. We're very much so, in this case, looking to inflammation. So that means looking into gut health and all the different sources of inflammation. Is constipation an issue? As usual, high stress can play a role in all those different kinds of things. Looking to nutrient deficiencies, and especially nutrient deficiencies related to the skin barrier and to the skin in general, both micro and macro. Looking into thyroid health, making sure thyroid's not off. Having hypothyroidism can kind of predispose you to dry skin and dry hair and that kind of thing. So that's a perfect example of that. If they have any other underlying skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis, perioral dermatitis, all of those kinds of things are just naturally predisposed to having a disrupted skin barrier.
So let's get into a couple of those pieces that people are going to be like, and stress. You said, and naturally, stress can cause a worsening of these things. So let's break that down. And then what are the key nutrients you look at? So let's look at those two.
For sure. And I think I'll copy you. I think you said this at one point in time. You sort of have all of your pillars of health, nutrient deficiencies, insulin resistance or blood sugar, gut health, inflammation or immune dysregulation, liver, all those things. And then the nervous system's kind of like a cloud over the top, right? If you have an overactive stress response, overactive sympathetic nervous system, it's going to have an impact on all of those different pathways. It's going to cause inflammation, which is going to disrupt the skin barrier more, which is going to promote inflammation and make your skin more irritated, et cetera, et cetera. So everything is interconnected, as I feel like we've done a good job of explaining. The second question, so nutrients specifically, I feel like people always forget about the macronutrients, like I already mentioned, making sure you're getting in enough protein, making sure you're getting in enough healthy fats, for sure, fiber, polyphenols, all of those things are super important. Then other than, you have your iron, B vitamins, vitamin D, of course, those are always important fundamentally. But then when we look more so to the skin, we're looking to, okay, do you have enough collagen, hyaluronic acid? Do you have enough vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, and zinc? Those are typically the nutrients we look to in for skin health and skin quality.
So our fat solubles, the collagen and hyaluronic acid thing. I know we've talked about that. I have it on my counter. I haven't taken it yet. How does that work from the inside out?
So essentially, collagen is an important building block to the skin. I feel like everybody kind of knows about collagen nowadays. And I think previously collagen was kind of this like question mark in the sense that it was like, oh, you take collagen and it gets broken down in the gut. How does it actually go back and benefit the skin? They've done studies now through dye, radio labeling, and those kinds of things to show that collagen actually comes back into its natural structure and is deposited into the skin in the way that it should be. So again, just structural integrity in general. And then hyaluronic acid is actually an important moisturizing factor that your body naturally creates. So again, similar to the collagen, there's evidence to show that the hyaluronic acid gets to where it needs to be, essentially. The other thing I haven't mentioned, and this is from a topical perspective, ceramides are also super duper important in your skin barrier too. So hyaluronic acid, ceramides, those are all natural moisturizing factors that your lipid barrier creates. So supplementing with those and getting those on topically is a good way to help your skin barrier too.
So supplementing, you mean orally, like ceramides orally?
No, sorry. Hyaluronic acid orally
Okay.
and
Yeah.
ceramides topically. I know hyaluronic acid topically is such a thing. I don't actually like hyaluronic acid topically, to be honest with you. I find that it actually is very irritating to a lot of people. So stop. I know. I like
Look at you
hyaluronic
coming in, breaking beliefs.
100%. The other thing too, so from a skin perspective, I mentioned the B vitamins in general, but vitamin B5 and vitamin B3 are significantly more important than the rest.
Why does B12 cause acne?
So I actually don't have the answer to that question.
Okay.
That's on my list of things to look up. I'm not entirely sure that the mechanism of action is actually understood yet, but that's on my list of things to know better. I feel like I've looked it up before and came up to this conclusion that it's not completely understood, but I have to circle back and check that out.
Last time I checked, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think my like
Yeah. Tell me,
deep,
what's your
dark, non-evidence based hole is that methyl donors, right? Because I mainly see it with methylcobalamin. I don't see it with with the cobalamin component. It's methylcobalamin.
Interesting.
I think when you take large amounts of methylcobalamin, it increases skin cell replication through supporting DNA.
Yeah.
And it also changes our microbiome. We know both of those things can be true. And so I think the combination of those create more skin shedding in a face of inflammatory microbiome. And boom, you're in this situation where your
Yeah.
skin is inflamed and you get little acne. Because it's not generally cystic. It's like, though, again, those like little bumps.
Yeah. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense. That's typically sort of when you get that like purge from vitamin A derivatives like retinols and retinoic acids. That's usually, the skin cell turnover is sped up so quickly that the skin cells clog themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Totally. Today's episode is brought to you by none other than Advanced Women's Health. If you are interested in diving in deeper to your health, if you are finally ready to feel like yourself, and you are finally over hearing everything's normal, everything's fine, and you want a deeper dive into your healthcare, then we are here to help you. We are currently helping patients in British Columbia and Ontario, Canada. But don't worry, if you're in another province, still reach out, get added to the wait list as we expand coast to coast. We cannot wait to work with you. Check out the show notes for more information on how to get started. So, what are a couple myths about skincare that you really love to overturn? We've gone through a couple today, but I think it's so much fun to mix like science with pop culture. So, what
For
are
sure.
2 or 3 of the biggest myths that you see that you've got a platform now that you want to overturn?
For sure. I feel like really the one that gets me the most is what we've been talking about already is the skin barrier stripping culture that we live in now. When do you ever hear about anybody telling people to support their skin barrier? It's always like, oh, you need more exfoliants, you need more acids, you need more enzymes. And that's just what's propagated consistently. In my opinion, that is not how you treat your skin or treat any kind of skin condition, literally. So that's definitely one. I feel like beef tallow is trending right now, big time. I actually have so
This
many
is facts, actually.
for sure. So to be honest with you, again, like everybody's skin barrier is different and everybody's skin is different. It's impossible to predict how people are going to respond, right? It depends on your skin barrier integrity. It depends on your inflammatory and sensitivity to different things. The way I see beef tallow is it kind of goes in that emollient oil occlusive kind of category. Beef tallow is like super duper thick and like very occlusive. If you have a tendency to having clogged pores, in my opinion, that's going to quickly clog your pores and create just this like massive entire face milia, clogged pores, that kind of thing. The other thing too is beef tallow is an animal fat, right? And animal fats do tend to be inflammatory. So I would say use with caution. I have had many patients come in who have switched their regimen over to beef tallow and now they just have this like texture on the face that they're just like, what happened to my face? And I was like, it's definitely the beef tallow, that combination of like too occlusive and clogging your pores in combination with the fact that it's an animal fat, so it's inflammatory. There's also evidence to show that people who have acne have a bad ratio of omega-3s to omega-6s in their skin barrier. They tend to be high in omega-6. So beef tallow is going to just go right in there and like load up the omega-6s. So I think that's going to create an inflammatory environment. That's when I see on Instagram and get asked about all the time, for sure. What about you? Do you have any skincare facts that you want myth busted, or is that?
I know. That's the thing. I was like, I've asked a lot of mine. I think the thing, when I talk to you about topicals, it's one, you deflate my love of things that smell good. So thank you. But two, there's also this grounded, evidence-based simplification. And I think that's always what I respect so much because obviously I love research and I love evidence. And we all get pulled into marketing. You know what I mean? We all get pulled into the before and after pictures of someone's skin and what it could look like. And I think it's really important. And this is something I talked about with Dasha too. We take our skin so seriously. We invest so much money in skincare products and Botox and all these types of things because we cannot deny that in our society, our skin is our calling card.
Okay.
If you have clear skin and you know what I mean, you have youthful complexion and that whatever luminance or whatever the word you used was,
I think
you're
I said
viewed.
voluminous. I think I said voluminous, which is not the right word at all.
No, lustrous. You said lustrous. I remember being like, oh, good word.
Voluminous works too, nice and plump and well. Anyway, sorry.
But that's the thing. Like, we view that as a state of health. We view that as a status state. And like the reality is for women, our status is defined by our appearance. It sucks. It's true. You can argue it or not. People judge you based on your appearance more than men. This is facts. And so I think people spend so much trying to change the state of their skin without considering holistically, or with considering but not knowing where to go to get help, to consider the fact that skin is the mirror. And I think that's for me, like, there are components, as you said, there are topical components that are really, really critical. Having a barrier, having a sunscreen, having, again, like actives or whatever you want, those things are critically important. And from my standpoint, I go through hormones, insulin, glucose, gut microbiome, inflammatory complexes, you know what I mean? Like circulatory processes, nutrient deficiencies. And so I think our mindsets mesh really well because, like, you've been with me for a while and you have your own brain, but you think in that way, right? It's not cult energy at everyone, right? Like, you're going through the methodology systemically, but then you also complement it and say, and here are the key things you need to know from a topical perspective. And so that it's such a massive area of research. It's hard to keep up on, to be honest.
Sure. And to be honest, like I 100% agree wholeheartedly that internal stuff is the most important. But people like to hear about topical stuff way more than the internal stuff.
Agreed.
So it's like I can have an entire appointment and be like, blah, 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 like, let's do this. And then at the end, go over topicals and they're just like, oh, so engaged. Oh, tell me more. Tell me this, So it's almost good to be able to talk topical because then they're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take on these topical recommendations and I'll do all of the internal stuff that she wants me to do too. For sure. And again, it depends a lot on your resilience. Like if you can get your insulin resistance under control and your inflammation under control and your nutrients up to par, then your topical like your skin should be resilient to varying topical regimens. It's not as important. So I feel like the topical regimen is a lot more specific or more important when people are flared up and in a state of, But yeah, one of the reasons I like skin, like just to sort of comment on what you said earlier, is, as much as I don't like the vanity of it, it's so important to people's identity and to their confidence and to their mental health. And, I see people come in who just have like acne all over their faces and you can just tell they're just so unhappy and their quality of life is affected by that. And then, we get them on the right track and they have clear skin and they're just like a completely different person. So, as much as it is vanity, it's like, it's not just that, right? It goes down to fundamentals and core and like all those kinds of things. So that's why one of the reasons I love skin so much.
It's so true. Like the number of times I have had patients that didn't go for job interviews and didn't go on dates and didn't do their thing because of a skin issue. And it's not just acne, it can be eczema, it can be psoriasis, it can be rosacea. Like there's all these different things. They hold themselves back in such a huge way that's where for me, I don't care how someone gets a result as long as they feel like themselves.
Right? Mindset and, having a positive attitude and thinking you are the one and you can do anything kind of thing. And, when you have that sort of skin condition getting in your way, that becomes very difficult. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's your calling card. It's the first step forward. So I love that. So what are 2 or 3 takeaways that you would love people to know about specifically, let's stick with like this stripper acne. Well, I don't know how you want to call it. You can rename it.
I would just say that take a second and reassess your skincare regimen. If you look at your skincare regimen, you write it out AM and PM, and like every single step in your regimen is some sort of barrier stripping product, then you're likely stripping your skin barrier. You should have maybe one, and again, it depends on your barrier integrity and all those kinds of things. You should have one sort of stripping component per regimen. If you have more than one, that's definitely not ideal. And I think before you sort of jump to this, oh, my acne is coming from clogged pores, and am I using comedogenic products, and my face is oily and it's dirty, and all those kinds of things, take a look at what the lesions really look like. Do they look like, sebum oil-based lesions like I described before, or do they look more like textured and irritated? If your skin becomes irritated after you use a product, then it's likely that your skin doesn't like that product. You know what I mean? So if you're going in and you're doing a chemical peel and you break out after, my guess is probably that your skin doesn't like that. So just like listening to your skin and not listening to this Instagram video that tells you have to exfoliate your skin twice a day, and just taking care of your skin barrier because it's trying to do its best for you. And if you just strip it all the time, then it's just, I don't know, sad. It's doing its best.
Totally. Totally. And no, I think it's such an important thing. And I think the other piece I always go back to is know there's other options. There are so many
Right.
people, and recently, like we've done a lot of different events and things where we're out talking to people. And the thing that I heard most extensively and most commonly is people being like, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know that I could go to a place where they would assess me, they would take my symptoms seriously, they would combine medicine with topicals, and you know what I mean? Like all these things. And so just never stop. Like I always said, the only reason I'm here and not in a very different place is because I never took this is normal, this is okay, or you're going to be fine for an answer.
For sure.
And I think as much as it can be so challenging and it's so vulnerable to come into a visit and to be like, this is my fifth, sixth try. These are all the things I'm struggling with. It's so important to not give up on yourself. And there are so many different approaches you can take for skin. And it's about finding the right person with the right thought process about your specific barrier and give yourself that opportunity to get that second opinion or third opinion or fifth opinion, because we see this all the time. You more than me. People come in and they've tried everything, quote unquote. And then a month, 2 months later, they feel like their skin's in a different place.
100%. Especially now, in this modern day world of just access to so much information about skin. And so it's very hard just as a person living in the world to navigate and understand what is right and what is wrong. And a lot of the time with the skin barrier stuff, you have people doing one thing and then it triggers them and they do this again. And it's just this like complicated, like, of course they're confused because it's super complicated and they need to like, okay, check mark, I've tried this. Okay, check mark, I've tried that. But you're right. That's so beautiful to say in the sense that you got to keep trying. And a lot of the time I like to tell patients, okay, well, how long has this been an issue? So don't necessarily expect that you're going to get changes tomorrow, or it takes time, it's a journey, that kind of thing, especially if we're changing behaviors and dietary things and stuff like that. And like even skincare regimen, like when I tell people this about cutting down on their stripper products, they're just like, ooh, I don't know if I can do that, because this idea, for example, acne is so ingrained that like it's excess oil, that the idea of taking them away, they just like, they can't handle it. Yeah.
Totally. So, what is one thing outside of what we already talked about, get help, etc., that you would love everyone to know when it comes to skin and skin interventions? Like, if there's one thing you could shout from the rooftops, what would it be?
About skin and skin interventions, can it be the same thing I've been talking about this whole time? To respect your barrier and do
Yes, again.
right? Because I feel like that really is what I would scream from the rooftops, honestly, is figure out what your barrier is doing. I know I sound like a broken record, but figure out where your skin
So do
barrier
I.
is and adapt your skincare regimen to that. And that's how you achieve skin. And that's the thing, right? Everybody, especially from a skin perspective, is totally different. So I can't predict what's going to happen to one person over the other. It's all a matter of trial and error to a certain degree. Like, obviously, it can guide you in the right direction. But, taking a look at your barrier and doing what's right for you, not what's right for your friend who's doing this or what you saw on Instagram or that kind of thing.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Rebecca. It's always so fun to nerd out on skin things. I always learn something new. That is for darn sure. And I will not be buying any beef tallow today. That will not be my vibe. If you guys want to book an appointment, learn more about your skin, all of the info will be in the show notes. For anyone in Ontario, we can help you out. Anyone in BC, Dasha is going to be your girl. Yes. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was nice.
Very good. And yes, we will be back with more things again.
Of
Have a
course.
good day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. And if you loved today's episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. That is how we spread this message, and that is how we are going to revolutionize healthcare in Canada for women. Have a beautiful day and be well.